Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today as we're going to talk about a very rare and special energy that is happening at the end of March 2021. We're going to be discussing the Venus star point in Aries, but what makes it rare is that it is conjunct Chiron. So I'm going to share with you some of the intuitive images and messages I've been receiving about this energy, as well as discuss the cycles of Venus and how this is significant in understanding our self-worth, our self-value, what we're learning about ourselves, what we're learning through relationships, and how we are able to continually spiral up and raise the bar in our requirements of ourselves and in our needs from ourselves. So this is an energy of rising up into more of your own heart, your own self-acceptance, your own self-love, and perhaps what you've been learning through relationships, since that is Venus's domain. Venus is the archetype of the feminine energies at a personal level. It's how we feel worthy of receiving love, how we feel worthy of being seen and valued by others, but essentially that starts with ourselves. It starts with looking at our own energetic unconscious around self-love, self-worth. How do I accept myself? How do I know myself? How am I in relationship with myself? And all of these themes are especially prominent when Venus is in Aries. Now, Venus is actually not strong in Aries. She's in her detriment, and that's because it's an energy that isn't quite her normal comfort zone. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is strong in Aries. So Venus is here in this masculine energetic turf, and she is more independent. She has a stronger sense of self. She has courage to be herself. She is a leader. Perhaps she doesn't always want to share or cooperate. She would prefer to do her own thing, trust herself, follow what she wants to do. And this can be misunderstood. This can be a quality that keeps people away or creates turbulence in relationships if it's not thoroughly understood. So Venus is not at her ultimate strength of receiving when she's in Aries. And during this Venus star point, Venus is direct and it's conjunct the sun at 8 degrees. And actually the energy begins around March 22nd, March 23rd, and goes for a good week into March 30th, 31st, when the Sun and Venus are traveling together in union in Aries. So it's a good week of their energy being strong for us and moving through that first decan of Aries. Now, that is the energetic starting point of the whole zodiac. That's when energy comes in that is seated, implanted, it's brand new, and throughout the astrological journey, it takes form, takes shape, and comes to fruition. So this is bringing in a new energy. When you look at Venus and the Sun together, they are traveling with a new sense of self-love, a sense of courage to own what matters to you, to really embrace who you are and what you love about yourself. This is a strengthening of self-acceptance because that Aries energy is very strong, especially when the Sun is in Aries. It can be very dominant, and it's asking you to have the courage to embrace your needs, understand what you need in relationships, what you need to feel loved, to feel that you're really being seen and understood. But of course, that begins with understanding that for yourself. So the journey begins within, and I feel like for many people, this has been a theme you've already been aware of. And that's because of the energy of Chiron here. So Chiron has already been traversing through the same place in your chart. Chiron in Aries has been going back and forth in this first decan of Aries, and it's bringing up the new parts of yourself that you're understanding, that you're meeting for the first time, perhaps the first time in your life. There's your own sense of self that you're seeing and understanding. And with this Venus energy, It could be that you've learned lessons, you've learned about yourself, you've come to see things through the domain of relationships, the relationships that haven't worked, that have been hard or challenging, through things that you needed to experience, whether they were lessons or healing experiences, whether you could see where the energies were out of balance or they weren't synergistic. There's things that are coming up to our awareness that I feel are quite significant. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this show. But it's important to understand that this Venus star point is really highlighting and focusing the truth of who you are, the authentic parts of yourself that maybe you haven't heard before, you weren't tapped into, you weren't aware of. Perhaps it was covered up by other people's energies. Perhaps you just weren't ready. You weren't at a place to see this in yourself. There's something here where the authentic self is rising and it's coming up in a way that's asking you to love and accept it. And that's part of not only the Venus energy of self-acceptance, but the Chiron energy, that beautiful Chiron energy that is healing our insecurities, showing us where it's okay to be all of who you are. Don't hold it back. Don't think that you have to be a certain way in order to be loved. This is an energy that is really asking us to embrace ourselves, love ourselves, own ourselves. And I don't mean that in some trite, light, airy way, because the journey of knowing ourselves continues throughout our whole life. But this goes back into some deeper unconscious energies that Chiron has been showing us throughout 2020. Now, Chiron has been at this 8-degree point of Aries throughout last year. May and June of 2020, also August and September of 2020, and again in November, December of 2021, and January 2022. So we are in process here with understanding more of who we are and understanding more of what we really want and what we really need, and to have the courage and confidence to accept it without judgment, and to also not dilute it, meaning to not dim it down or withhold it from others, but to have the courage to say, this is who I am. So we have this deep healing energy of Chiron now receiving support from the Sun in Aries and Venus in Aries at this Venus star point. So the Venus star point happens every 9 months. And this particular one is when Venus is direct, conjunct the Sun, which is called a superior conjunction and is known as a full Venus. A full Venus is basically a very full embodiment of this energy, and it pertains to 2 previous cycles. So I will go through each of these cycles here. You might want to jot them down because you might want to sit with this information to make some connections for yourself. So this is a full Venus that is happening around, we'll call it about 2 degrees to 9 degrees of Aries. 4 years ago, in March 2017, Venus was also conjunct the Sun, but it was called a new Venus. So look back 4 years ago to that last week in March 2017, and this was a new Venus that was opening up something to you in the Aries area of your chart around relationships, around what you were understanding about yourself, what you value, what has meaning to you, what you desire. This could be financial. This could be something that has been working with you through your money, through your income, through what you own, through your possessions. Those are all energies of Venus as well. So whatever was first coming up to your awareness in late March 2017, now Venus has another star point here, but she's full. So there's been something learned, an embodiment of the energy, a higher consciousness in this area of your chart. We'll call it 2 to 9 degrees of Aries that you've been learning. And again, because it's Venus, you could be learning this through relationships. If you are in a long-term relationship, what has shifted for you in the last 4 years? Perhaps this is in your relationships to women, which is Venus's domain, be that sisters and siblings, be that women friends and other friendships and women in your life and circles of women. It's all Venus related. This can also relate to your dating world or any kinds of relationships you've had with other individuals and what you've learned about yourself in the past 4 years. Now, this Venus star point in late March 2021 with Chiron here is giving you deeper understandings about what you really need. What you really need from yourself, what you need to acknowledge in yourself because of these patterns or relationships, or because of what you've experienced in various themes and healing cycles. What have you come to understand about the truth of who you are and what you require from yourself that could be courageous, that could be brand new, that could be, again, parts of yourself you just didn't notice or see before. So that is one of the cycles here, is that this energy pertains to 4 years ago, March 2017. Now, the other cycle that's important is when Venus had her last star point, which was in June 2020 at 13 degrees of Gemini. This is when Venus in Gemini was retrograde and was conjunct the sun. So last June, something was coming up for your consideration. In Gemini, it's thoughts, it's ideas, it's things we're thinking about and maybe we want to express or communicate. It could have been an activation in your throat chakra where you wanted to express yourself or share something. This was even very cerebral. So that energy that started in June 2020, now 9 months later, a full gestation period later, something is coming up for you to understand about yourself. And because it's Aries, that's why I'm referring back to yourself, your sense of self. It's a very subjective understanding that only you fully know and understand. And there's a sense here that it is fresh. There's an initiation. There's a new sense of self that you've been working with and working through. There's parts of who you are that you're maybe seeing differently, or you're seeing it in a new way. You're seeing it from a higher way. So this is a very new energy in Aries. And yet there's something that's been moving through our minds around some themes here. And I feel again that it's really been through relationships that we've learned more about ourselves, our needs, what we want, what we require, what feels good. And this is a Venus star point that is supporting us in being very clear with ourselves, meaning being vulnerable with ourselves, being very honest and saying, wow, maybe I didn't handle X, Y, and Z with that person very well. Maybe I didn't see parts of myself in that relationship. Maybe I would have handled it differently. Maybe I would have said something else. Maybe I just want to learn from it. I mean, there's this component here with the Aries energy of how do I take this and use it with wisdom and consciousness and then go forward, keep moving forward. So there's no going back. This is a fresh energy. So it could be too that you have some clarity around relationships in your life that you can't stay in, you can't go back to. The energy's over. You've learned a lot from it. And now you're ready to move forward and to see where you are ready to be more honest with yourself about who you are. So perhaps it helps to just think back on last June 2020 and what has shifted for you in the past 9 months, what's come up to your awareness, what you've come to understand about yourself, about your friendships, about your partnerships, about women in your life, about anything that you're interacting with. And maybe you're starting to see where it's not in alignment with who you really are. And this is a time here during this last week in March that you call in and connect with more of that authenticity of who you are now. And the other thing that's quite fascinating about this Venus star point energy is that the North Node is in Gemini and Mars is in Gemini conjunct the North Node. And so that is an activation of a direction, a sense of purpose, a sense of this is where I'm ready to go next, because that Mars energy is action. It's what we desire. In Gemini, it is what we need to communicate or say, where we're ready to make a decision or a choice, where we're ready to follow something and it's something that we've been thinking about. It's maybe something that's been in your mind and you're ready to now put it into action. Well, what's fascinating is that this conjunction between Mars and the North Node is at 14 degrees of Gemini, and that last Venus star point was at 13 degrees of Gemini in June. So here we have another reiteration of the energies from, well, even like late May, early June 2020 that are coming forward, and we've been learning from it. We've been understanding something. It's been supporting us in our own growth, in how we maybe have been perceiving our lives, perceiving our journey, what we've created in terms of stories, the narratives we tell ourselves. That is one of the power of the mind, is what we tell ourselves, that information that gets recirculated. I feel like there's energy here that's helping us move forward into a new direction, a new timeline, a new trajectory that reflects what we've been learning. And I feel like this is very strong. I feel like there is something very powerful in our charts right now at that 13 and 14 degrees of Gemini, as well as the first decan of Aries between, let's say, 2 to 9 degrees of Aries. There's a lot of energy here. Again, new starts and a sense of movement that we're meant to follow and trust. And this could feel quite internal for you. This could be very private. It could be something that only you know you've been moving through and understanding. And there's something here where that energy could feel stronger, where there is a greater self-acceptance. There is a greater sense of this is who I am, and I really embrace who I am, and I'm willing to accept it and see things in a different way. Almost like being kinder to yourself, but that Aries energy is strengthening. It's a confidence. It's a confidence in self that is coming through and supporting us. And I feel it at a very deep cellular level. I feel it as, with the sun energy coming through, it's like the blasts of neutrinos, those blasts of light consciousness are being embedded in us. A sense of self is really growing, blossoming, and blooming, and it's coming forth with a higher love vibration, a higher sense of feeling loved by the universe. And as these energies come in, they shift and recalibrate our relationship with ourselves. And that's also an Aries theme, is how do I see myself? How am I understanding who I really am? And how am I feeling strong in my healthy sense of self? I feel like this is supporting us in ways that we don't quite mentally understand, but that we feel. And with that Chiron presence there, I get the impression that we're healing some very personal life themes, some very personal lessons or patterns or things that we just were out of touch with. And now we're like, okay, I did my best. Okay, that's what I understood at the time, or that's just how I experienced that person or these people. That's just how I grew up. And those are my experiences growing up, and I can see it in a different way now, but that's what I understood at the time. Or I understand more about that connection or that partnership or that friendship. Like, it brings in this energy of accepting yourself for who you've been every day of your life. When you look back on the full spectrum of your life, it's like, well, just accepting who you were every single day is all we can do at times in order to relax and calm our nervous systems, to be in a place of acceptance, and to also stay in the present moment. So there's a reconnection to who you are now, the truth of who you are now, the authentic sense of self of who you are now. And I feel like all of that is being strongly supported, and it's almost like it has this really bright light to it, this really warm, nurturing, calming energy that allows you to relax into who you are without any type of without punishment, without feeling like you have to be harsh on yourself, or that you did something wrong, or that there's anything that you're meant to carry forward that doesn't have that love energy in it, if that makes sense. A bit like, instead of beating ourselves up, let's just give ourselves a hug and relax into what you've learned so far, and that it's all meant for a higher purpose when we learn from it. So this Venus star point is a superior conjunction. It's called a full Venus, and it's when we are able to see something from a higher perspective, to learn from it, to integrate it, and to be aware of it. Now, the images I've been receiving have been quite fascinating, because what I've been getting these visuals of is of a giant book. And it's one of those giant fairy tale books, similar to a Hans Christian Andersen giant book of fairy tales. Only this book, it has like those really thick pages, many stories inside, and also feels like it's related to the Akashic records and the energies of various lifetimes, various timelines, various experiences. And so I've been seeing this book filled with all of these stories and experiences, and it represents all of your experiences in relationships. Whether that feels like relationships in this lifetime, relationships across all lifetimes, or specific kinds of relationships, whether that feels like romantic relationships or family relationships or friendships and so on. It could be all of the above. It feels like the theme is relationships, because that is the Venus energy that is coming forth very strongly. And the visual around this book is that all of these stories are very different. There's a lot of variety. There's different time periods, different cultures, different things that we have experienced and lived through that have left an imprint, that have felt very energetically significant. It feels like these are multiple stories that we've experienced at different levels of consciousness. And as I was getting the visual of this fairy tale book, the one thing that was emerging that came through as what was really significant about this timeline of stories is that the only consistent part of each of these stories throughout the ages, throughout different time periods and countries and different roles that we played, is that the common thread is you, is your energy. And for simplicity, we could say this lifetime. So in this lifetime, the common thread between all of your relationships is you. You are the common denominator, regardless of whom you connect with and how and when and for how long. And what it feels like is that this is a time period where we are raising our consciousness around ourselves, around our relationship patterns, around the parts of ourselves that we haven't fully seen or accepted, the parts of ourselves that maybe we have suppressed, we just didn't meet, we didn't know this part of ourselves was there. It feels like some of these energies were also I'm going to say taken over or dominated by different people who maybe had a stronger energy. This is true if you are an empath or very sensitive. This is true if you have felt like your energy is adaptable, like you had to adapt or do something to keep the peace, or you had to show up a certain way in order for the other person to recognize you or to see you. So essentially, the roles we've played, the different roles we participated in that could have been genuine, especially at that time in our lives, but maybe now it doesn't feel authentic. Now it doesn't feel like there is a role you can keep playing, or you can't hold back what you've learned. You can't hold back what you've healed. You've really transformed, especially in the past 4 years. Since 2017. And what have you learned that you cannot compromise for anyone else, but also for yourself? And this is where we come into higher awareness around our relationship with ourselves and what we have told ourselves or what we have said to ourselves or what we have not acknowledged and not seen in ourselves. So there's a deeper rewiring here, and it's going very, very deep. And this will be different for each of us, but it feels like it goes very deep into relationship patterns, relationship habits, relationship roles. This could pertain as well to what you first experienced with a father or with a mother, and how that established how you felt loved and acknowledged and seen, such as, did you feel that your father really understood who you were as you matured throughout your life and grew older? Do you feel that your mother was really attentive to your needs, that she really saw you, that she really was perhaps nurturing or gave to you? Of course, there's so many variables here, and there's so many different ways this plays out. So I'm basically speaking in general terms, but it's looking at what these unconscious parts of ourselves were not receiving, where we were not getting what we needed and we didn't know, or our parents didn't know, the caregiver didn't know, the mentor, the elder, the teacher didn't know. But now perhaps you know. Perhaps you're clear on what hasn't felt good to you or what hasn't felt right to you. And I was talking with one of my dear friends recently about this very theme. And we were talking about basically the universal experience of how we first relate to the world and to other people is through our parents. And that the mother and the father are those first experiences of feminine energy and masculine energy. Of course, I'm being general here, and this will vary for everyone in terms of different genders and sex and experiences of different people in your life. But in general, it was about, well, what was your first experience of feminine energy? What was your first experience of masculine energy? And how that establishes in us at an unconscious level various relationship patterns and various things that we aren't even aware of, because it's what we know and it's what is comfortable and it's what we deem as normal. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't even mean that you had a bad parent. It doesn't mean that, your mother or your father failed in some way. What it means is that this was your first experience. And so perhaps it became just what you unconsciously then created in your life. And of course, it could have worked out very well for you. If you had a very supportive, loving, kind mother, you had a very strong, protective, stable father, and that allowed you to experience those energies in your life, and they became your requirement or what you unconsciously then experienced in relationships. But what it seems is coming up for many, many people is how, I can see now where some things weren't exactly what I needed or weren't exactly spot on. And then this is where the healing happens. And this can happen at any time in our life. I mean, you could have this understanding when you're 14. You could have the understanding when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 50s. It's different for everybody. But there's something about this Venus star point energy that really asks us to dig in to what our first experiences of love were, and then you can separate that out and say, okay, well, what was my first experience of feminine energy and what was my first experience of masculine energy? And depending on how conscious and aware your parents were, it could have been that you experienced that divine feminine energy and that divine masculine energy. And that was what you knew, and that was what you grew up with, and what you felt as you matured and grew throughout your life. But typically, for many people, that's not the case. And there was something in the parental relationships that came to your awareness at some point and maybe showed you what was lacking, what was missing, what you needed that wasn't there. But at the same time, we just didn't know any different. Didn't know any better. It was just very familiar. It was that comfort zone of energy, or how you thought the relationships were supposed to show up or play out. And again, I'm speaking in very general terms here, but this does relate to the Venus energies, and it does relate to how we receive love. The patterns we've had in our lives about receiving love, feeling worthy, feeling seen, And as we raise our consciousness, we then understand that it's up to us. It's our responsibility to understand that for ourselves first, that a parent isn't to blame, a mother or a father didn't necessarily do anything wrong. It just was something that was misunderstood and is part of our maturing process. This is also why it can be a little bit uncertain or scary to do relationships differently, because we have maybe some really deep-rooted patterns or things that are a comfort zone where we feel safe. We feel safe in the behavior that we know. We feel safe in a connection that's familiar. And so when we expand our consciousness and we start to really see more of who we are, more of our authentic self, more of what is valuable about ourselves, what we love about ourselves, when we tap into those inner child experiences, as well as the outer child experiences. You hear a lot about inner child, which is our internal world, but outer child is how we express it. The outer child is how we behave and how we interact with other people. So we have both an inner child and an outer child. But as we raise our consciousness around our own understandings, then we start to shift. Then we can put new things into practice. We raise our energy, we raise our consciousness, we raise our vibration, and that's where we then attract in different people who match us in that space. Although it can be a little bit uncertain. It can be that sense of, this is a new dynamic. This is new for me. I don't know if this is going to work. I am new. I am different. That is this Venus star point energy. It's looking at all the work you've been doing, all the work you've been healing, how you've been growing and learning and transforming, and how it has created a new self-definition and a new self-awareness. And depending on your own natal Venus, is how you will move through this process. And so you want to look at your own natal Venus, whether that is in Cancer, Leo, Capricorn, what have you. And that is how you can go deeper into understanding what you are here to accept and love about yourself, and how you move through relationships, how you grow through relationships, and basically how you exchange energies with others and with the world, because we're in relationship with everything. We're in relationship with not only people, but with everything in our environments and in our world. And this is where we are continually interacting with other energies at often a very unconscious level. This Venus star point in Aries conjunct Chiron is very healing. It is showing us not only how far we've come, but how we're continuing to grow. Chiron will return to this 8-degree point of Aries, as I said, in November and December of 2021, as well as January 2022. And it's also notable that the next Venus star point will be in Capricorn. That'll be 18 degrees of Capricorn in January 2022. So the cycles always continue on, but this one is especially strong for knowing yourself, loving yourself, understanding yourself, as well as seeing how you've been formed through relationships and how you've been formed through those primary relationships at a young age, and where you've taken responsibility, or you're ready to take responsibility for filling in the gaps or the holes that you're needing, and that ultimately should come from yourself before they can come from another person. And so going back to this visual I have of this big, beautiful book of stories and experiences, and understanding that the common thread in every story has been your energy, there's something here where there can be a strong transmutation of what doesn't work for you. And I always see this as the violet flame of transmutation. I tend to visualize it being at the crown chakra. It's a gorgeous purple energy. It can also have some hints of white, of very pure energy that allows us to move any lower vibrating energies up to the crown chakra, to transmute it, to surrender it, to let it go. And that can be anything from hurt, pain, healing that you've been doing because of relationships. It could be anything where you haven't felt safe to be yourself. It could even be any energies that you have in your auric field from other people, from others who have greatly influenced you or who have greatly formulated how you experience relationships. Because again, this could be across multiple lifetimes. This could be something that you'd have to tap into and trust for yourself. But it feels like there are many energies that are being recalibrated within us, that are shifting within us. And with this new Venus star point cycle, we are birthing new parts of our heart. It's like the heart is expanding. There's a growth here, and it's a growth of self-acceptance, self-love, the ability to see the fullness of who you are. And I feel it as a sense of confidence, a strengthening, a sense of self. And this is what the Aries energy supports. It supports knowing ourselves and understanding more of who we are, to do so with responsibility, to do so while keeping our ego in check. Every fire sign can have a big ego at times. So it's not about that exaggeration of the ego. It's more about how the journey you've been on of self-understanding is paying off. That's what it feels like. It feels like this is a turning point. This is a clear understanding. This is where like relationship changes are happening, where things that aren't in alignment fall away, where you're maybe reflecting or learning some things or seeing it in a different way or in a new light. And now it feels strong. It feels like I've got it. I'm clearer. And there is something here that I feel is coming through that honors you, even in those vulnerabilities, even with the process that you've been healing through and moving through. There's strength in that. There's beauty in that. And there's a sense of inspiration to keep going. Because this is a new beginning point, be very aware of the new energies that you're feeling and how you want to direct them. This could be where you're getting clearer on what you want in your life, what you want in a partner, what you want in friendship, what you want in your world, because it reflects back to you your own sense of self-love that reminds you you're worthy, and you can absolutely experience everything you want in this lifetime when you come from that place. So it's a very deep energy that is rewiring us, recalibrating us, but also reminding us of the power to be in our mastery and to be in a place of self-love for all of our humanness, even things that we deem as flaws and insecurities and vulnerabilities. Those are some of the most beautiful things that make us who we are. And in fact, they're highly relatable when we share from the heart, when we share our vulnerabilities, when we speak our own truth, we're really tapping into more of our own power. So overall, this is a very significant Venus star point, and it is supporting us in what we've been healing now. It is a turning point. We also have the Libra full moon happening at this same time. That will be exact March 27th, March 28th, depending on your location on the planet. And I have a separate video on YouTube for you that goes through the chart of that Libra full moon and how it is a turning point and how it can be very healing for the heart, very healing for ourselves, and very healing for this new sense of self that is emerging at this time. So I hope this resonates with you and has offered you some healing perspectives on what you're feeling or experiencing in your own life. And as always, I thank you for your time, energy, and presence as you listen to this podcast episode. I have new episodes for you every Wednesday and Monday, as well as additional videos over on my YouTube channel where you can check out the playlists and see if there's anything that would be beneficial to you right now. And if you want to go further in your astrology chart and learn more about relationships, I have a course called The Astrology of Relationships that talks about 10 different relationships in your life and the energies in your natal astrology chart. This is more of an intermediate level course, and that means you need to already know the basics of your astrology chart, and we go into more of what you can look at in your chart in addition to the house rulerships, the planets, the signs, everything. We go into a lot. So check that out. And if you use coupon code STAR30, you save $30. And I hope that that is good for you to understand perhaps more of the people in your life and the energies that you're here to work with in this lifetime. As always, you can find out more about me over at mollymccord.online, or I have my author website at consciouscoolchic.com. Thank you everyone for joining me. I am very grateful to share this wild ride with you, and I will see you back here soon for another podcast episode.